Tchaikovsky, or Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky, was a Russian composer. He lived from 1840 to 1893. And apparently, he was the first Russian composer to really make an impact in Western Europe, in part because his style kind of incorporated elements of Western Europe and Russian styles. So there were Russian purists and nationalists who were critical of that, and some of the Western Europe people were critical as well of his music, but he gained quite a good amount of popularity and obviously is well known these days. He's most famous for his 1812 overture, for his Swan Lake ballet, the Nutcracker ballet, and for his piano concerto No. 1. Hi, my name's Dan, and this is a review of The Nutcracker by Tchaikovsky, specifically the 2010 album released by Sam and Rattle and the Berliner Philharmonic of that piece of work. This is a request review, so it's requested by somebody I know in real life called Anna. Hi, Anna. And but I feel the need to tell you that most of this channel that I've got is not request reviews. In fact, I have found a list that claims to be the 3,000 greatest albums of all time. So at a place called Acclaim Music, where they have created this list by amalgamating critic lists from across all time. And there's been time shot at 2019, and I am working my way up from 3,000 up to one. Hopefully I'll get there, and I'm just over 1,000 of the way through. But occasionally I step off that list to do something off list. About roughly 1 in 10 review is off list, and this is one of those, and it's a request review. So I do some of these. If you want to request a review, it's really easy. All you need to do is to leave a comment on any of the videos on my channel. So YouTube have changed how they notify creators about comments. So there's a slightly higher chance now that I'll miss a comment than used to be the case. If I don't, I will now. So I acknowledge all requests that I see, and I put them on my list. If I haven't acknowledged it within a few days, then either I'm away having a break somewhere, which you can't always tell because the videos come out delayed, or I haven't seen it. So feel free to ask me again if you feel like I haven't seen it. I never promise absolutely that I am going to review anything that I have been asked to review. When I get to it, there may be reasons for me not to do so. Occasionally, there have been a couple of times when there have been reasons that I also don't want to say in front of, what is a public audience. So I might not review it, and I might not explain why not. But they have been very few and far between so far. Okay, on to this album. So this is obviously it's an album of ballet music, and it's orchestral, almost entirely instrumental. There is one bit of vocal stuff in here. And I feel like kind of natively I want to call this classical music, but I'm aware that when people who aren't, when people who are really into classical music, this can rile the pedants at times, because there are several periods of music in what the general populace call classical music that are distinct. And so you've got which way around Baroque music. So the Baroque period, the classical period, the Romantic period, and the modern period. Maybe we're going beyond that now as well. And there's probably stuff earlier than that as well. This is the Romantic period, which is and it's late 19th century, and also it's ballet music, and it's orchestral, and it's I'm not going to go too much into all that. Now, some of this I am very, very familiar with. And that's because there are, in fact, basically two works here involved. One of them is the ballet, and that's the thing that I've been listening to, what I'm reviewing, is the full set of music. But extracted from that, there were a particular list of some of the, I couldn't call them tracks, because that's natural to me from albums and recording. But the pieces here, some of the sections, were put together in a suite. So it's called the Nutcracker suite, which was a limited number of these. The suite is much better known than the ballet as a whole. So the bits that are in the suite are very, very familiar. Also, my history with the suite is that at the age of 16, I sat an exam at school. So in the UK, in England, they were O levels back in the day when I did them. They're now GCSEs, and there were subject specific exams. That's the way things work in England. And I did music as an O level, and as part of that, we had some set pieces. So these were pieces of music that we had to study and then answer questions on in the exams. One of our set pieces was the Nutcracker Suite, so I studied it, and the tunes are really good, and they lodge themselves in your head, and so it's very easy to remember them. I probably remember the Nutcracker better than almost probably than any of the other set pieces that we had. So some of these tunes are really iconic. We've got the Waltz of the Flowers, we've got the March, we've got the Miniature Overture, we've got the Dance of the Sticky Plum Fairy, as my dad used to call it. What I always think of as Everyone's a Fruit and Nutcase, which was from a UK advert for Cadbury's Fruit and Nut. And we got the Dance of the Merlitons or the Flutes or something like that. I think that's the one that goes. Yeah, anyway. My music teacher, when we were studying this, said that Tchaikovsky was really good at tunes, but he was nowhere near as good at developing themes and exploring them like somebody like Beethoven, who managed to take four notes, the da-da-da-dum, and stretch it out to a whole symphony. Basically, Tchaikovsky was brimming full of tunes. And this is definitely a collection of short sections, although some of them are longer. So some of them are really short; they're like only kind of a minute or so, and some of them are several minutes long. Um, and as a result, it's a weird ballet. Actually, I've seen it as a ballet. It's not as story focused as a lot of ballets are. The first half has got somewhat amount of story going on. The second half just seems to be a kind of a load of set pieces one after another of these different tunes and stuff. And basically, it feels like he got some ideas, and then he just wanted to. He got all these tunes he wanted to put somewhere, and so he'd use that as a vehicle to do that. I might be wrong on this, but that's what it feels like to me. Um, so the tunes that I don't know here, I'd still say are pretty good. And some of these, if they'd be played more often and I heard them more often, could be almost as iconic as some of the other ones. My favourite of the tunes that I know is the Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy, because it's just great. My favourite of the ones that I didn't know going through is Waltz of the Snowflakes, which has got a bit of wordless vocal choral stuff in it, which I often really like. It's got a nice feel to it. There's quite a bit of use of toy instruments in here, particularly percussion. Everybody knows the kind of the sound of the thing for the Sugar Plum Fairy, which you used at the start, which is a Celeste. So a lot of people will know that that's a Celeste, which is a kind of keyboard version of a glockenspiel. So it's got metal bars that are hit by hammers, but you play it on the keyboard. It was written originally as for Celeste or piano. I don't know if that was because he suspected that Celestes would be hard to get hold of. But pretty much, I don't think I've ever heard of a recording of this that uses a piano, not a Celeste, because the Celeste is such a great sound for it. The whole thing's quite long, actually. I don't know exactly how long it's two CDs with on this album. And that comment brings me neatly around to talking about less about the composition, which is mostly what I've talked about, because that is what I think is important here, and more onto the album itself, so the recording and the performance here. But I haven't got a lot to say here because my knowledge of romantic period music is not good enough to be able to know or to be able to go, well, this recording is better than that recording. Other than technical quality, which it is, it's really nice and clear sound. It's very confident recording of it. I couldn't say, different conductors. So I used to, I used to know a woman who would hear something on the radio and wouldn't just be able to tell you what piece of music it was and who the composer was, but who the conductor was and who the orchestra was, and often what year it was recorded as well. And so her knowledge of this stuff was phenomenal, and mine's nowhere near that. But I'd say it seems fine. I have no arguments. It seems like a good recording for me. Okay, in as much as I can judge. So in kind of summary, this is tune-filled, classical, romantic music. Some of it's very iconic, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. So thank you, Anna, for bringing me back to something that I have known and loved, or certainly the suite I've known and loved for a long time. And I've heard the full thing a few times before, and for prompting me to do that again. However, as always, at this point, I'm going to invite anybody who has an opinion to give their opinion of the Nutcracker, the Nutcracker Suite, this recording, Tchaikovsky, my review, or the weather, whatever you're feeling. But that's it from me for now.